and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by Mike of HEALiX. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time. Yeah, so to kick things off, I'd love to start out with your upbringing. So, where did you grow up, and what would you say your childhood was like?
Sure. I grew up out in New York, Long Island. Pretty middle class. My dad was really hard working, blue collar guy. Mom was stay-at-home mom, big into hockey, so really came up in athletics. Once I got to the teen years, that turned into fitness, nutrition. Uh, I'd say fairly typical family. Uh, After teens, continued playing hockey career into college. So I went to 4 years to a small university outside St. Louis,
Hmm?
studied psychology, and went on the grad school down in Texas, finished a master's degree down there, and actually went into that field for about 10 years, working as a lot of diagnostics, special needs children and families, counseling towards the end of the career, which I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But yeah, playing hockey all along the way, I would say, if I'm really looking back on my childhood and really my upbringing, I would say that was the biggest motivator molding me as an individual and kind of the way that, the direction my life moved. Even with my education, hockey steered it all.
Yeah,
Kind of steered me into, where we are right now, actually, when it comes to talking about HEALiX and the business. So.
yeah. With that background of hockey, I'm curious, post-graduation, what did that look like, that dynamic? So were you working full-time, playing hockey? What did that look like?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I was reflecting on it just recently. I think all through that period, when people asked me what I did and what I was, I'd always tell them I was a psychologist. But the reality of it, I was an inline hockey player. I played ice and inline coming up, but inline was really my passion. I played at the highest levels that are out there, but it's a player sport. It's not a spectator sport. So I made some money along the way with it, but it certainly didn't pay the bills. So psychologist is what paid my bills, but I would
Mhm.
say most of my enthusiasm and time spent during the week was actually in training for hockey, preparing for hockey, traveling for hockey.
Yeah.
Really playing at the highest levels postgraduate afterwards. I mean, it was a professional circuit, really enjoyed it, super competitive. I've always been a competitive person, so it was a great time in life. Unfortunately, it had come to an end, but, everything moves in motion.
Yeah, I was reading some on the site there. If you can share some of that glimpse of that story. So the kind of the end of your career there, was there an injury that took place that kind of
Yeah,
put that?
yeah, it was I had a really big turning point in my life actually when it comes to hockey and everything entrepreneurial and so I I played goaltender in hockey and had concussions coming through the way. I definitely was of that mindset, the hockey player mindset, where if I'm still standing and going, I can still play for the team. So I definitely played through one too many and towards the end of the career. I had a couple back to back, and then they started piling up real easy.
Mm,
And it came to a point around, I think I was 33 at that point, where I got another significant one, and it really came down to like a family choice.
yeah.
I had to stop thinking about the team and start thinking about my family. My wife would be the one taking care of me if I really was having issues, or even more serious ones. I really have stuff going on till this day that last one never really healed up. But either way,
Mm,
came to a head. I had to stop playing hockey, and my professional career with psychology, like right at the same time, came to a head also. So I had an employer that wasn't so understanding of my situation. That last one left me kind of like needing to stay in the dark for a couple of weeks.
yeah.
And they really weren't too understanding of that. I also didn't want to leave my kids. As a counselor, I was working with multiple individuals that were suicidal, severe depression, and
Mm,
there's no substitute psychologist. So if I'm not
yeah.
there, they don't have anybody.
Mm,
Um, Either way, all that going on at the time, I decided that that employer wasn't for me. I decided I really did need to focus on my family and looking out a little bit better for them.
mm,
That kind of included reevaluating myself income and financially. And while I really found it self-gratifying to do counseling and work with the special education community, it really didn't pay all that well.
yeah.
So it was a little bit of, hey, I need to take care of the family financially and also with my time, emotionally, psychologically.
Mm,
So yeah, the injuries in hockey, paired with, I guess the universe all coming together at one point to form a head is is definitely what pivoted me into, the entrepreneurial world.
Yeah, I'm curious what that transition then looked like for you. So it was a realization like you're fulfilled with the job. It was you love doing the job, but also financially, what was that shift? Was that entrepreneurship? Which that's a scary shift, but I'm curious.
Yeah, no, it was a difficult one, which is, the tale you hear over and over and over again. And it honestly wasn't my first thought. Like I said, when I go back to childhood, I was brought up in a very blue collar family. My dad was very blue collar. He raised me to be that way. So, all coming up through high school, college, I always held jobs, like always. From age 9, I had a job. I was out there doing something from very young, whether it was
Wow.
mowing lawns or working at the local ice cream parlor before I get working papers. Like I was doing something always. So
Yeah.
when I first made that transition out of the world of psychology, I actually had started to get into. I was big, like even when I worked in psych on the weekends, I'd be working on the water. Long Island, we live on an island. There's water everywhere. I love to fish, so I
Hmm.
was a commercial fisherman on the weekends also. So after after I decided I had to move out of that realm, I really was looking at doing something like welding or underwater welding, submersion welding, and then as I was in that period, I left the psychology world, officially resigned, and then I took doctor's orders and sat on a couch for like 3 or 4 weeks because of that concussion. So I really was contemplating what I was going to do.
Yeah.
The blue collar work definitely came to mind first, but as I was sitting there, I came across something called drop shipping. So
Mm.
it really interested me. Also, not only because it was just interesting, but it was also a totally different realm from working for somebody else, right? Like it
Yeah.
gave the opportunity for me to work for myself.
Yep.
And it also opened up this whole concept that was new to me as someone raised blue collar, that there was no ceiling on my income. It wasn't really anything I had even really thought about or,
Yeah.
really explored in the past. So really that's it started kind of tickling my interest. I started reading more, watching a lot of YouTube videos, following certain individuals on YouTube, just really taking in a lot of content. Made the shift to read a lot more because I couldn't look at screens, but reading wasn't as
Mm.
bad on my head when I was recovering.
Yeah.
And really, when I came out of, we'll call coming out of the darkness, when I came out of the darkness, I shifted the entire mindset from just going to like maybe doing some kind of union blue labor job to starting out something on my own, which was, like you said, scary for sure.
Yeah.
There's no safety net. It's all on you. So
For sure.
um, yeah, that's what motivated it. At least that's what the spark was. That's
Yeah.
how it began.
For sure. Talking on drop shipping, I'm curious, what were you focusing on certain key products at that time? That wasn't into what you're doing with HEALiX today, right? Or what was that?
No, we don't drop ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was really a journey and an adventure, and I guess I can speak a little bit to the struggles that come along with it.
Yeah.
But I just shared my background. None of it's in marketing. None of it's in any kind of business realm. The real only crossover was a little bit in psychology, and when it comes to psychology of marketing, persuasion, influence, like there's a little bit of a crossover there. But
Yeah.
really, I was green as can be. Drop shipping was kind of a low ceiling where I could get in. For those of you who don't know out there, the business model allows you to start with very little off the bat because you don't have to invest in large amounts of inventory. So you can just fulfill direct from a manufacturer or supplier, and you don't have to put tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars up front to get going.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started out just because that's what everybody was teaching at the time. It was a great learning experience. But it was also a costly one. I
Yeah.
mean, when I made the shift, I cashed in my retirement. I used up all of my savings, everything I was engaged at the time, and all the money that was going towards a wedding went towards this.
Yeah.
I mean, I went all in, and I did start off drop shipping. Started off with a little bit of traction, just following what people was handing out, but I probably lost all that money that I invested. So at the end of
Wow.
year one, I was in the hole quite a bit. And the traditional drop shipping model is kind of this rapid testing, right? Like you find products that you think will have a strong demand and a
Yeah.
fair margin, and you advertise them and you see what kind of return you get on that input. And I did that for about 2 years. I mean, a lot of it was testing and losing
Yeah.
for 2 years. I really didn't hit much. I just spent a lot of money on top of everything that I just mentioned. I also
Yeah.
compiled about $10,000 or $20,000 in credit card debt on top of it. But
Mm.
it part of the journey when I got into it, I knew it was going to be something very challenging, like financially and psychologically.
Yeah.
Really had no support along the way. Not that I can blame anybody around me. If you're not part of it, it kind of seems crazy.
Yeah.
Especially my wife and my closest family, they just see me spending money hand over fist.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in the office for like 90 hours a week. I'm not making any money. I'm just spending money.
Yeah.
It looks very crazy. So you don't have any support. You're questioning yourself the whole time because, I have no experience doing it. I'm teaching myself as I go, and you're not getting results for 2 years. It can definitely be quite daunting.
For sure.
But I bring it all up because you ask if we're working off drop shipping now. There really was a pivotal moment a little after the COVID incident where I realized I really need to stop marketing products that are just kind of like random and what I think is in demand and might have a decent margin, and maybe work towards something that I can really get behind.
Yeah.
Something that resonates with, my cultural background, the things that I enjoy, the people that I talk to and that I know best. And that really was the fitness, athletic community, wellness community. All along my career as a hockey player, I was big into organics. I was big into natural wellness, simplistic living, things like that, when it came to health and wellness. So I started kind of researching products that geared a lot more towards that niche. And I came across a product that I thought was really unique, really interesting. And, I started using it myself and I thought it was a great product. And that's kind of where the inception of HEALiX came along, was at that point.
Incredible. So I'm curious, what was that product that persuaded that interest, and what did you start using and experimenting and wanting to improve yourself?
Yeah. So that first hero product is actually our hero product still to this day. That hero product is the HEALiX sauna blanket. And yeah, I definitely, the whole thing's a learning process, but it was nice to find a product that I could get behind, that it was a little easier for me to explain to the audience. And it had great traction right off the bat, and there was very low ceiling for competition because not many people were really selling it at the time. I really only had like one or two competitors at the time. So I found a couple manufacturers and sorted through who I thought would give us the best, quality. It was always something from the start for me. I really wanted high quality products. They're not really cheap. They're not budget products, but they do last, and they're made of, quality materials. So after going through a couple of manufacturers, I probably spent another like 6 months to a year really fine tuning things that, as a personal user myself, I thought would benefit, clients in the future. And I think that's paid off over the years. I think people appreciate the quality that we put out.
Yep. Getting into some of the R&D process behind something like, starting with that hero product, what did that process look like for you? So it's a new category. It's a whole new industry to you. So where did you look for some of that advice? A lot of reading? I'm curious.
Yeah, a lot of reading, a lot of research. Aside from like all my experience and interest in health and wellness, physical fitness in the past, I've always enjoyed research in general. It's always random for people, but I really enjoy reading medical research. So it's something that I was always into and got more into when I started researching some of these products. So I would actually go off of some medical research. I would read as far as aspects and the type of technology that was being used in the medical research. And then I would communicate with manufacturers to see what they could offer. And really just a lot of networking, like try to meet as many people as possible. It became easier over the years because when you start getting a little bit more pronounced with your brand, people reach out to you. But in the start, it was all outreach to others. And just seeing what people could offer me, like what partners could offer me if they could follow through on the things that I wanted. And, over the years, you find people that are able to fulfill a lot of your requests. So, that's kind of where we are today. And when I launch new products, that's really what I'm looking for in a partner is who can provide what I'm, looking to do as far as, unique features on our products versus competitors.
Yeah, for sure. What did that supply chain look like from the beginning? So you came from drop shipping, but I'm curious, were you holding an inventory up front? And also, where did the capital come from for that manufacturing run?
I mean, I talked a little bit about my financial situation, on the
Yeah.
start of it, and when I got to the point that I was ready. What we sell is too large and too heavy to drop ship. It would have been my
Yeah.
preference, I'll be honest with you, just because starting out, it makes it a lot easier to break the barrier and start to grow the business. Um, but not possible. So it was a whole nother learning avenue for me. I have no background or education in finance either. So I
Yeah.
needed to start learning about finance and how I might be able to raise capital. And I actually got into this strategy of rotating 0% interest credit cards, but
Mm.
definitely our own inventory. I tested the product in kind of a different way than most people would. Um, I tested it without having any inventory. I had
Mm.
no inventory. I had a couple samples and some photography, and I launched the product just to see if it was worth the investment before I went and laid out like 10, 20 grand on inventory.
Yeah.
And it went off very profitably. So at that point, I contacted customers that had purchased and offered a generous discount and told them there was actually going to be quite a lengthy, wait if they wanted to get a first time around HEALiX.
Yeah.
More people waited than I expected, to be honest. I was ready to basically eat all the money and refund everybody, but more people were willing to wait than I thought. So I really pulled capital from that 0% interest credit card
Wow.
rounding for a couple of years, really, and kind of funded capital that way. On top of all the debt that I've collected with investing my savings and that credit card debt, I also had massive student loan debt because of my career was it was a pretty lengthy education.
Yeah.
So it was traditional funding was not an option for me when I started out. My credit score was not great, so that was part of it. Also, was fixing my credit score.
Mm.
And down the line, after you do business for a couple of years, all of a sudden you become a little bit more of a wanted partner when it comes to the financing and banking.
For
So
sure.
it got easier as time went along, but at the start, yeah, it was a struggle to get inventory and find the capital for it.
Mm.
But I think that's part of the entrepreneurial journey. Like you
Exactly.
kind of need to expect to have a lot of challenges, and I think the people that do best are the ones that are able to handle it in stride and
Mm.
pivot as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
If you're going to be stressed out at every little thing, you're going to have a hard time. And I was me
Yeah.
at one point for sure. It's a big deal when you're putting $10,000 in credit card debt down. You don't know what's coming. It's hard not to
For sure.
stress out, but it's definitely something I would, try to emphasize and
Yeah.
suggest that you hone in on if you're looking to start up your own business in somewhat of the same fashion as myself.
Definitely. Getting into that next product rollout. So at what point did you leave the hero product, not leave it, but did you move on to that next product? What was that next product? And I'm curious the timeline of that as well.
It was actually a pretty long one because of the financial situation that we just
Mm.
spoke about. So our bottleneck was really financing for a couple seasons, and
Mm.
working with a sauna product. I mean, that the sauna blanket is heat therapy for the most part. It's technically light, but it's perceived as heat. So we're very seasonal. The
Yeah.
business would drop off in the summer significantly. So it kind of puts a full stop on trying to grow and scale the business. So
Mm.
we really didn't grow the catalog for the first like 2.5 years or so. We were a single product store, just selling out all the time. I
Wow.
couldn't keep, I couldn't scale our marketing because we were throttled by our inventory and our cash flow. So
I see.
it was a little bit of a struggle to get past that barrier for a little while. When we started getting a little bit more breathing room with it, that's when we decided to branch out. And actually, our PEMF mat was the second product that we brought on. It has a really cool history and a background, so that's really
Yeah.
what grabbed my attention. It's a unique product, and it's one that really has only recently become available to general population.
Yeah.
But it was a lengthy one bringing that one on. It was new for me to bring on an additional product onto the catalog. It comes with a whole new set of challenges.
For sure.
And there was a limited amount of manufacturers out there also for the product. So it was hard to find a quality partner. And we
Yeah.
definitely went through multiples before we found someone that we could really trust in. And I was speaking to you earlier about how we really love our 10th mat now. Like we put a
Yeah.
lot of time, energy into it, and we really love the quality of the product.
For sure. So I can kind of share an endorsement too. Like as we were talking at the beginning, is what I love, as I mentioned, was the presets on the mat. It's you don't see that often on some of the other mats, and quickly being able to shift like into a preset number 1, preset number 2, all the way to 12, and those different functions, and it's all catered specifically to those hertz, has been huge. So I'm curious, what made you go that route too, and what did that R&D look like from your side? Because no background on PEMF, but
Yeah,
you made this amazing product. I'm curious.
yeah, that one was a little bit more of spitball and back and forth with the manufacturer we had found. The original round of inventory we did with them wasn't including those programs,
Mhm.
and it was an idea that came up, and they kind of listed out a couple, and then we worked together to figure out which programs we would like to prioritize and put on there. But it's definitely one of our more unique features compared to competitors out there, and it's my favorite. I mean, I thought when we got into this, we would sell a lot to athletes and fitness oriented people, but really we sell more to, we have so many referrals from doctors and physical
Mm,
therapists. That's probably one of our biggest drivers in traffic.
yeah.
So we sell to a lot of chronically ill individuals like arthritis. And one of the cool features that we have, especially on a larger size mat where it's full body, is now we have programs that you can technically run through the night. So you can sleep on the mat through the night and get a therapy session in while you're sleeping. Yeah, I mean, it came through with really some spitballing, but like, as you can tell,
Yeah,
what I'm talking about, I'm pretty excited about it. Like, I really, it took a lot of time and effort, and I think what came out on the other end was great, but really just cooperation between me and the manufacturer and having good communication.
for sure. Well, to the listeners out there, so we started with the sauna blanket rolling into the PEMF mat. What are some of those key benefits? So there's numerous features. Of course, the mat heats, red light, has the frequencies. If you can kind of walk through, what are the like benefits of using a PEMF mat, especially like
Yeah,
HEALiX?
yeah, sure. So, I mean, I kind of would like to touch on the background of PEMF for a minute, if you
For
don't
sure,
mind, just because
I
it's
would love
super
that.
cool. Yeah, it's a really cool background. So, it started out really in veterinary medicine with racehorses to help speed up the healing of non-union fractures in racehorses.
Mm,
And it got such great traction and such great results that other areas of medicine started looking at it. NASA actually adopted it at one point because one of the things that it does is and our product allows for this also, you can change frequency. So NASA was using it because when you leave the Earth's atmosphere, the Earth has its own magnetic pulse that's always going. It's called Schumann's resonance.
hmm
And what they were doing was they were exposing, you know, out of atmosphere travelers, astronauts, to the frequency while they were outside of the atmosphere, so that when they came back in, it'd be an easier adjustment for them coming back,
mm,
and for general wellness, really. And then it was adopted later on for multiple things. It all depends on frequency and amplitude for different, for different reasons or treatments.
yep.
But things like depression, certain types of brain cancer, those non-union fracture heals were started to be used with humans, not just veterinary medicine.
Mm,
So some real like it's some really really interesting stuff. But
yeah.
if we circle back to our product, you really have low amplitude, high amplitude PEMF products. And a lot of people associate like low versus high, good versus bad, but they really both have their pros and cons.
Mm,
Ours is a low amplitude, but one of the pros of the low amplitude is you can use it more frequently for extended periods of time.
yeah.
So, one of the, a couple of the benefits that we really zero in on for the clients that we have come our way and what they're looking to do, chronic pain is a big one. So it
Mm,
definitely helps with inflammation, internal inflammation, blood flow, um, lymphatic flow, and just kind of like dulling out of chronic pain in general, besides all the mechanisms that help do that. It's just kind of soothing,
yeah.
relaxes the body. So it's that's probably one of the larger benefits that our clientele are looking for and seek. But depending on the frequency, like I said, that really has something to do with it. You can do anything from pain relief, blood flow to just anti-anxiety,
Mm,
relaxation to higher frequencies that are almost going to wake you up and energize you,
yeah.
and really everything in between. And we were talking about those presets. We have programs that are on there that kind of are laid out like that for you. We have a lot of people that use it multiple times a day, so they use a higher frequency in the morning to kind of get their day going, wake up, and then a lower frequency in the evening to kind of wind down, calm down, and get a good night's rest, which is another benefit, is helping with
Yeah.
the eating cycle. So
Love it. So I'm curious, what is the marketing? What marketing do you find works well for, especially like the PEMF mat and maybe some of the others? But it's definitely a product that a lot of consumers might not know some of the key benefits. So it's probably education heavy. I'm curious, what do you find works well?
yeah, we do, and that's part of our branding in general. It's not even really part of our marketing aspect, but
Yeah.
like I said, I like to read a lot of medical journals and medical research. So I'm big on education, and we definitely try to educate our customers as much as possible when it comes to this stuff, so they can make decisions on their own, and we can provide the tools for them to do so.
Mhm.
But really, our hero product still drives a lot of our traffic, the sauna
Mm.
blanket, and we have a lot of people that come across the website and kind of wander around, and they come across the PEMF mat and they realize like, oh, maybe this is really more in tune to the goals that I have right now. Outside of that, marketing wise, like it is a growing trend on Google right now.
Yeah.
Has been for a little while. So I guess I can let that cat out of the bag because, we have significantly more competition now than we did like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So we definitely run some marketing on Google for cold traffic with people that are maybe interested but don't know too much about it. And one of the things that we do, when people land on our product page for PEMF is we have a ton of links that send you out to those medical researches that
Mm.
I mentioned, so people can read and educate themselves.
Yeah. Looking at, so we mentioned the supply chain earlier on. I love that. I haven't heard that actually in the podcast. Is the way that you guys launched it. You didn't have product ready, but you rolled it out once they purchased. That's funny.
It's been frowned upon within the community before. I don't think because of unethical, but I don't think
Yeah,
people are typically willing. Like I was willing to sacrifice all the money that I put forward,
for
right? Like I
sure.
spent a bunch of money marketing, and it was like, well, if I lose the $5,000 on marketing, I lose the $5,000 on marketing, but better than losing like 25 grand on inventory
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
I'm sitting on,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I've gotten a couple looks for that one. But hey, that's another part of the journey is like you
Exactly.
got to do what works for you, what
Exactly.
makes sense for you in your situation. And in all honesty, like when you talk to people and get into drop shipping, it's not usually in the price range of our products and our catalog and what we work with. It's usually lower ticket stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of the general knowledge on drop shipping and starting up an e-commerce brand don't really apply to what we're doing. And that was definitely a realization that I came to at some point also. It was like I can only
Yep.
rely so much on what I'm hearing from the outside,
For sure.
focus a little bit more on my own experience, what's going on. So.
For sure. Yeah. And starting with that and like getting into today, I'm curious, what does it look like now, that supply chain? So the manufacturer, where are you guys holding inventory?
Yeah,
Do you
so
have a
we have
3PL?
we partnered up a couple of years ago with our partner. I really love how they do this. Actually, it's a little bit of AI that's starting to come into play with stuff.
Mm.
But we have multiple warehouses spread out across the country, roughly like 4 to 6, I want to say. It's rough because it actually changes.
Yeah.
So wherever we're seeing concentration on orders, we actually shift our inventory around pretty frequently to help with fastest delivery times possible. That
Wow.
was another thing that we really wanted to provide, especially with Amazon these days, which we're not on, but
Yeah.
everybody expects to get their products very quickly. So that was something that we wanted to be able to afford, and we do pretty good with.
Yeah.
I just had a report come in this morning. When we get an order, on average, it comes in just under 4 days. So
Yeah.
our stuff's pretty heavy, and that's where we are now. So we're spread out across the country, across a number of warehouses.
Yeah.
And shipping goes according to where the order comes in. Really.
Yeah. Talking on Amazon and like other avenues, brick and mortar, for example. But I'm curious, do you primarily see yourself staying D2C, like on the website, or could you see shifting to Amazon? What does that future look like?
Oh, I got lots of ideas,
Yeah.
but I also struggle sometimes with staying a little present because it's easy to get ahead
Totally.
of yourself. I think there's still a lot more to bite off. We're talking business-wise. There's still a lot more to bite off when it comes to really horizontally scaling in the business-to-consumer realm.
Yeah.
But business to business is definitely something that's sitting on my mind when we start to kind of plateau on, horizontally scaling in the business to consumer area. And
Yeah.
I've played with the idea of going brick to mortar also, but I'm still in the process of building teams, building systems right now.
For sure.
Taking on a brick and mortar probably would be biting off more than I can chew because there's only so much time in the day.
Yeah.
But it's something I would like to do at some point, especially having like a genuine passion in some of these therapies. And you start, I'm sure if anyone out there that's listening, that's familiar, like you see these day spas, health spas, med spas starting to pop up
Yeah.
pretty frequently. And if you've ever used them, a lot of our therapies are in those facilities. I mean, that's really what we offer is a more
Yeah.
portable, more compact, more affordable version of those,
Yep.
in brick and mortar large therapy devices.
For sure. I mean, something I could see, unless you guys already are, that vision's there, is like affiliates with, like you mentioned, a lot of your referrals come from doctors. So like maybe chiropractors, therapists. I could see a very high density
Yeah.
like referral program from there. For sure.
So we do. I mean, a lot of we do have an affiliate program. I do have a handful of affiliates. We also have. I have a handful of resellers also that push the HEALiX brand
Mhm.
and are selling for us. But it's funny, like even though we do seek affiliates and we bring affiliates onto the team, sometimes the best referrals come from people that just came across the brand organically and just recommend us from their own personal experience. I
Yeah.
would say that I've probably seen more come in through that way than through our actual affiliate program.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I
Yeah,
like to
it's
conclude.
nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like to conclude each episode with this. I mean, your story of starting small, like starting from hockey, all of the learnings along the way. It's been incredible. As we wrap up, if you can share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe something you've learned or regret along the way, what would you say that would be?
Regrets, huh? No, I don't know if I have too many regrets, especially at this point now that I've kind of come
Yeah.
to the other side. If you asked me that question like 4 years ago, I might have a whole laundry list for you.
Yeah.
I would say if you're going to get into the entrepreneurial path, the journey, definitely prepare yourself mentally. It's going to be a lot of challenge. You need to be ready, like I said earlier, to pivot and to be emotionally controlled. If you can't control your emotions, it's going to make the whole thing a lot more difficult for you.
Mm.
I think you also need to go into it making sure that you don't hold resentment for people. Even your closest family and friends are probably not going to support you. So prepare yourself also for kind of a journey of solitude until you start seeing some success. And then even when you start seeing success, I'm starting to learn maybe keep it to yourself a little bit more.
Mm.
Not for terrible reasons, but I think it just helps you as an entrepreneur
Yeah.
to just be quieter and kind of move in quietness. But preservation is definitely the number one thing. I don't know how a lot of people will take this advice, but I'm a big fan. I read a lot of literature outside of medical journals too. Think and Grow Rich was a book that I've probably read a half a
Mm.
dozen times now and was really a big motivator and guide for me in the entrepreneurial journey. For
Yeah.
anyone out there that's not familiar with the book, it was written basically as a case study to some of the most successful inventors and entrepreneurials, minds in the past,
Mm.
like Thomas Edison. So one thing that is mentioned in that book is I think it comes off of a like an old Greek story. Like back in ancient Greece, there was an invasion, and they brought the whole army to the shores of this battle, and they
Mm.
burned all the ships, and the
Mm.
army freaked out, and the commanders basically said to them like, now the only way home is through the enemy, so you have no way to retreat. The only way out is forward and to
Mm.
win, and that's the only way you live and survive.
I
And
love that.
I kind of lean on that mentality a lot as I was going through some of the harder stuff. Like it's not an option to go backwards. I
Yeah.
was like $40,000 in debt. The only way to get out of it was start to pump revenue out so that I could pay that debt off. It
Yeah.
was never I'm going backwards. It was never I'm going to try to find a job and pay that off over time. It was
Yeah.
always I'm committed to this, and I believe in my process and my strategy. I believe in myself.
Yep.
I believe in my goals, and there's no retreat. It's all forward.
Mm.
And I think that was very valuable, as I made my way through some of the more difficult
Mm.
stuff. So I probably would recommend you read that book. I think it's
I
a
love
great
that.
book for any entrepreneur. And be ready for preservation and really I think it takes a lot of mental fortitude. So you're going to grow a lot. You're going to need that. Be ready to grow like psychologically as you make your way through it. It's a big head game. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people think of the finance like I brought up, but really it's very small stuff compared to the head game. It really
Yeah.
is all about keeping a calm mind and being able to keep a vision.
Love it. Well, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check
Yeah,
out
my
HEALiX.
pleasure.
Yeah, the listeners, make sure to check out HEALiX at HEALiXinfrared.com.